Picture this. You're at a birthday dinner for your girl, and the conversation somehow turns to money, the way it always does when you're a few glasses of wine deep and everyone's finally being real with each other. Someone mentions they just opened a brokerage account. Someone else says they started putting extra into their Roth IRA. Someone at the other end of the table is talking about how her portfolio had a really good quarter. And then there's you, nodding along, laughing at the right moments, contributing just enough to seem like you're part of the conversation, but secretly hoping nobody asks you directly what you've been doing with your money, because the truth is you haven't started. Not really. You've been meaning to for years. You've had the brokerage app downloaded on your phone for 7 months. You've watched enough YouTube videos to explain what an index fund is at a dinner party without faking it. You've Googled how to start investing at least 4 different times. At least 4 different times. But when it comes to actually moving the money, actually clicking the button and committing real dollars to the market, something stops you every single time. A voice that says you don't know enough yet, that you need to understand more before you risk it, that you should wait until things are less uncertain, until your situation is more stable, until you feel more ready. And y'all, that voice, that feeling right there, it is costing you a staggering amount of money. We're talking about a gap in your future wealth that, if we do the math right now, could easily reach $1.2 million or more. Not because you're bad with money, not because you don't have the skills, but because of something researchers have started calling the investing confidence gap, and it is quite possibly the most expensive thing most women have never heard of. My name is Felicia, and I'm here to tell you the truth about money because somebody has to. On this channel, we talk about what women actually need to know to build real wealth. Not the watered-down, skip your latte advice, but the real strategies that can change your financial trajectory for generations. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because what we're about to unpack today is one of the most important conversations this channel has had. And if this video shifts something for you, a thumbs up means the algorithm shows it to more women who need to hear it. Let me start by telling you something that should make you genuinely angry when you hear it. When researchers at Fidelity Investments analyzed the accounts of more than 5 million customers over a 10-year period, a full decade of real data, 5 million real people, not a small sample, not a cherry-picked group, they found that women's investment portfolios outperformed men's. Not by a little, by an average of 0.4% every single year. I already know what you're thinking. That doesn't sound like much. And I promise you, we are going to do the math on what 0.4% compounded annually over a 30-year career actually means in real dollars. And when we get there, you're going to feel something. The Warwick Business School looked at nearly 2,800 investors in the United Kingdom and found that women beat men by 1.8% over a 3-year period. A Wells Fargo study spanning a full decade from 2012 to 2022 found that women achieved higher returns while simultaneously taking on less risk than their male counterparts. Hargreaves Lansdown, a major UK investment firm, did their own analysis and found that women returned 0.81% more than men over the same 3-year period. Study after study, institution after institution, decade after decade, keeps landing in the same place. When women invest, they tend to do it better than men. And here's what the research tells us about why. Women trade less frequently, which means fewer transaction costs, eating into returns, and fewer emotional, impulsive decisions dragging performance down. Research shows that men log into their investment accounts almost 5 times a week on average, while women average fewer than 3 logins per week. Single men shuffle their holdings 67% more than single women, according to a University of California at Davis study. And all that activity, all that doing something actually hurts returns. It costs money in transaction fees. It means buying at emotional peaks and selling at emotional valleys. It means constantly trying to time a market that cannot be timed. Women are more likely to research thoroughly before committing money. Women are more likely to hold their investments through market volatility instead of panic selling at the worst possible moment, which is the single most common and most costly investing mistake that exists for retail investors. Fidelity found that women were 8% more likely than men to simply wait out market downturns rather than make a reactive move they'd later regret. On every behavioral metric that actually predicts long-term investing success, women consistently show up ahead. And yet, and I need you to really sit with this contradiction, despite all of that evidence, despite being by the data naturally suited for the patient, strategic, disciplined approach that builds generational wealth, 64% of women have never invested. 64%, compared to just 47% of men. A George Washington University study found that only 34% of women feel comfortable making investment decisions compared to 49% of men. A BNY Mellon study found that only 28% of women feel confident about investing their money at all. And only 1/3 of women who are actively investing identify as investors. They're doing the thing, the money is in the account, the trades are happening, but they still don't see themselves that way. This is the confidence gap. Women who are by every objective measure capable of building serious wealth, choosing not to start, choosing to wait, choosing to stay on the sidelines because they don't feel ready. And readiness, as it turns out, is the most expensive feeling in the world. Now, here's where I need you to really hear me, because this is the part that most financial content breezes past too quickly. The confidence gap isn't just a feelings problem. It's not something you can fix with a mindset shift and a motivational Instagram post. This is a wealth gap, a cold, hard dollar amount gap, and I want you to understand exactly how much it costs in real money. So let's do the math together, because percentages feel abstract, but dollar amounts hit different. And I want to show you this math, not to shame anyone about where they are, but because I genuinely believe that most women who haven't started investing have never seen the actual numbers laid out in front of them. The financial industry has historically not been great at giving women the real picture. So here it is. If you are 30 years old and you invest $400 a month starting today at an average annual return of 7%, which is a conservative estimate based on the long-term historical average of the stock market, you will have approximately $1.01 million by the time you are 65. That is one decision consistently executed for 35 years, turning $168,000 of your actual contributions into more than $1 million. That is compound interest working in your favor, and it is the most powerful wealth-building tool that has ever existed for ordinary people who did not inherit a head start. Now, what if you wait? Not forever, just 5 years. What if you keep telling yourself you're not quite ready, you need to do more research, the timing isn't right, the market feels uncertain? If you start at 35 instead of 30 and invest that same $400 every month at the same 7% return, you retire with approximately $610,000. Same discipline, same monthly contribution, same investments, same everything, except 5 years. The cost of those 5 years, $400,000, gone. Because of 5 years of not feeling confident enough to start. And if you wait until 40, you're looking at about $364,000 by retirement, which means starting at 40 instead of 30 cost you roughly $646,000. That is not a rounding error. That is the price of a confidence gap measured in the currency it actually costs. But here's where it gets even bigger, because the confidence gap doesn't just affect when you start. It affects how you invest once you do. Researchers have documented that women, once they do enter the market, are more likely than men to keep their money in overly conservative positions that feel safe but grow too slowly to actually build wealth. They are more likely to hold significant amounts in cash rather than investing in growth assets. One report found that women keep more than 70% of their wealth in cash. Y'all, I understand that instinct. Cash feels safe. Cash feels controllable. Cash feels like it's right there if you need it. But cash sitting in a regular savings account earning 0.5% interest while inflation runs at 3% or 4% is not safe. It is quietly losing purchasing power every single year. Let me make this concrete. $50,000 sitting in a savings account at 0.5% over 20 years grows to about $55,500. That same $50,000 invested in a diversified index fund averaging 7% annually grows to over $193,000. The gap between those two outcomes is not a rounding error. It is $137,000 of future wealth that evaporated because someone chose the feeling of safety over the reality of growth. BNY Mellon estimated that if women invested at the same rate as men, there would be an additional $3.22 trillion in assets under management globally. $3.22 trillion sitting on the sidelines because women don't feel ready. When you combine the cost of delayed starting with the cost of underinvesting in growth assets once you finally started, we are not talking about a $400,000 gap. We are comfortably at $1.2 million. That is the lifetime price tag of the investing confidence gap, and that is why this conversation matters so much. Here's what I need you to understand, and this is the part that made me genuinely upset when I started doing this research. The confidence gap is not your fault. I want to say that again because I need it to actually land. The confidence gap is not your fault. For decades, the financial industry was not built for you. According to Ellevest founder Sally Krawcheck, 86% of financial advisors are men. 90% of traders are men. 98% of mutual fund managers are men. And 99% of investing dollars are managed at firms run by men. When an entire industry is built by one group of people, for one group of people, is it any surprise that everyone else walks in and doesn't feel like they belong? When every image in every financial advertisement, every voice on every investing podcast, every face on every finance show signals a certain kind of person, confident, male, decisive, very particular kind of suit, the implicit message to everyone who doesn't match that image is, this space was not designed for you. And it does not stop at advertising. This is where they really get you. A study published in the American Economic Review analyzed 27,000 real-world meetings between financial advisors and clients at a major bank. What they found was damning. Advisors offered more self-serving advice to women than to men. Female clients received recommendations for lower quality, higher fee products. Men were significantly more likely to receive rebates and fee discounts on those same products. Women were steered toward conservative, low-growth investments, not because of their actual risk tolerance, but because advisors assumed women were less financially sophisticated and then profited from that assumption at the client's expense. 2/3 of affluent women worldwide say they feel misunderstood by their financial advisors. Women in meetings with male advisors report being talked over, being addressed through their male partners instead of directly, or being given simplified explanations they never asked for. There is a reason 43% of women say they don't have the confidence to invest right, and it is not because women are less capable. It is because the system that was supposed to help women build wealth has in too many documented cases actively worked against it. The confidence gap was engineered by an industry that benefited from women's hesitation. And I'm going to be real with you, your hesitation has been profitable for them. The more you wait, the more your money sits in low return accounts that they benefit from, the more you pay in fees for advice that doesn't serve you. Understanding that shifts the whole conversation. Now I want to talk about something that doesn't get enough airtime in mainstream financial content because the confidence gap lands differently depending on where you're starting. And if this channel is going to be the real talk that it says it is, then we have to be honest about the specific layered reality that Black women are navigating. Because the confidence gap costs everyone, but it doesn't cost everyone equally. The data for Black women represents a compounded reality that is both urgent and important to name clearly, not to point to as evidence of limitation, but to point to as evidence of just how much is at stake and just how much strength it takes to build wealth against these particular headwinds. According to the 2021 CNBC and Momentive survey, 59% of Black women do not own any investments at all, compared to 34% of white women and just 23% of white men. Only 49% of Black women have retirement savings versus 61% of the broader U.S. adult population. Urban Institute research found that the typical Black woman heading a household had literally $0 in home equity, while white women held nearly 10 times the value in stocks and bonds. U.S. Census Bureau data tells us that households with a white householder had 10 times the wealth of households with a Black householder in 2021. 10 times. Y'all, this is not a confidence problem in isolation. When you earn less because of the compounded weight of both the gender wage gap and the racial wage gap, when Black women working full-time are losing over $22,000 a year compared to white men, according to the National Women's Law Center, every financial decision becomes harder. When you are more likely to be supporting parents and siblings and extended family members financially because you're the one who made it, when your student loan debt is higher than any other demographic in the country, when the financial advisors who might help you navigate all of this don't look like you, haven't lived any version of your experience, and, as the research shows, are often giving you objectively worse advice than they give male clients anyway. A Goldman Sachs survey found that 46% of Black women started investing outside of a retirement plan less than 5 years ago, compared to just 24% of all respondents. That is not because Black women aren't interested in wealth. 69% of Black women investors in that same survey said building generational wealth is what motivated them to start. The motivation has always been there. The runway has just been shorter, the headwinds stronger, and the barriers more structural. I'm not saying this to discourage anyone. I'm saying it because pretending the playing field is level when it is not doesn't help anyone build wealth. We name it clearly, we work around what we can, and we build anyway. So what do we actually do about this? Because I did not come here to just catalog the problem, I came to help us solve it. And the single most important thing I need you to take from this conversation is something the data makes absolutely clear. You do not need to know everything to start. In fact, knowing everything is not what makes someone a good investor. Trading on all that accumulated knowledge is actually what makes someone a worse investor, according to the research. The men who are overtrading, overanalyzing, overconfident in their ability to time and outsmart the market, those are the men who are consistently underperforming the women who just bought a few index funds and waited. I used to believe that I needed to learn more before I started. I used to think that real investors knew something I didn't, some secret language, some formula, some insight that would make me feel ready. And what I eventually figured out is that waiting to feel ready is the strategy of people who never start. The gap is not in capability, it is not in intelligence, it is in action. Here is what starting actually looks like in concrete, practical terms. If you have an employer-sponsored retirement plan at work, a 401k, a 403b, a TSP, contribute at minimum enough to get the full employer match. This is step one, and it is non-negotiable. An employer match is a 50% to 100% immediate return on your money before a single investment decision has been made. And if you are not taking the full match, you are leaving free money on the table every single pay period. If you don't know your match percentage, you look it up today. Not this week, today. Call HR, log into your benefits portal, find out the number. Step 2, open a Roth IRA if you don't have one. In 2024, you can contribute up to $7,000 per year. A Roth IRA grows completely tax-free, and when you withdraw that money in retirement, you pay zero taxes on it. Zero. That tax advantage alone, compounded over 30 or 40 years, is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on your contribution level and your returns. Vanguard, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab all offer Roth IRAs with no or very low minimums to open. Step 3, invest in index funds. Not individual stocks, not cryptocurrency, not whatever your cousin's friend says is about to go up. Low-cost index funds that track the broad market, a total stock market fund, an S&P 500 index fund, something boring and diversified and inexpensive. The expense ratios on index funds from Vanguard and Fidelity can be as low as 0.03%, which means you keep nearly all of your returns instead of handing them to an actively managed fund that, statistically speaking, won't beat the index anyway. The boring approach, consistently executed, is how ordinary people build extraordinary wealth over time. And step 4, hear me on this because it might be the most important of all. Change the story you are telling yourself about who gets to be an investor. Only 1/3 of women who are actively investing identify as investors. That identity shift, from saver to investor, changes how you make every subsequent financial decision. When you are an investor, you stop keeping 70% of your wealth in cash. You stop moving to the sidelines every time the market gets turbulent. You start thinking in decades instead of weeks. I used to think of myself as someone who was trying to save money. The day I let myself be called an investor, the day I actually claimed that identity, is the day my relationship with money changed for real. I know some of you are forming the objection right now. Felicia, this all sounds great for people who have extra money lying around, but I genuinely cannot invest right now. And I want to honor that because real financial hardship is real, and I'm not in the business of pretending otherwise. If you're behind on rent, if you're managing high-interest debt that is actively growing, if you are in genuine survival mode right now, the basics come first. But I want to push back hard on the idea that you need a certain amount of money before investing makes sense. because the math tells us the opposite. What you actually need is time in the market, not a large lump sum. A $50 per month contribution starting at age 25 at 7% annual return produces roughly $131,000 by retirement. Someone who waits until 35 and contributes $100 a month, twice as much every single month, ends up with approximately $122,000. The person investing half as much, starting a decade earlier, comes out ahead. The amount matters far less than the act of beginning. Most brokerage accounts today allow you to open with as little as $1. Fractional shares mean you can invest in any stock or fund without needing to buy a whole share. Automatic investment settings mean you can set it once and let it run without having to think about it every month. The barrier to entry has genuinely never been lower in the history of investing. The only barrier left is the story we tell ourselves about why right now isn't the right time. And for the women in their 40s or 50s who are hearing all of this and feeling that specific combination of regret and anxiety, I need you to hear me clearly. You have not missed the window, not as a motivational statement, as a mathematical fact. If you are 45 and you start investing $800 a month today at 7% annual return, you will have approximately $600,000 by retirement. Not $1.2 million, but not nothing either. That is financial security. That is options you would not otherwise have. That is the difference between lying awake at 65 wondering how you're going to cover your medical bills and sleeping soundly knowing you have something real behind you. The catch-up contribution rules exist specifically because Congress recognized that people who start later still need a viable path forward. If you are over 50, you can contribute an extra $1,000 per year to your IRA and an extra $7,500 to your 401k on top of the standard limits. Use them. Women are 80% more likely to face poverty in retirement, and the women in that statistic are not the women who started late and went hard. They are the women who never started at all. Whatever your starting point, whatever your age, whatever you have been through, the most powerful thing you can do right now is take one concrete action today. Not plan one, not research one, take one. Open the account, set the automatic transfer. Log into your HR portal and increase your contribution rate by even 1%. Do one thing today that future you will genuinely, sincerely, deeply be grateful for. Y'all, the investing confidence gap is real. It is documented. It has been measured by Fidelity and Warwick and the American Economic Review and Goldman Sachs and institutions across 2 decades of research. It costs women potentially over $1 million in future wealth over a lifetime of hesitation. But here is what I need you to hold when you walk away from this video. It is something you can choose right now, today, to start closing. One concrete action at a time. The financial industry was not built with you in mind. The messaging that reaches most people has historically not been made for you. The advisors in the rooms where wealth decisions get made have historically not looked like you or understood your specific financial reality. None of that means you don't belong here. You belong here. The data says you are good at this. The data says that when women invest, they outperform. That when women commit to the long game, they win the long game consistently across study after study, institution after institution. The only thing standing between you and a fundamentally different financial future is the belief that you need to be more ready than you already are. You are ready. You have always been ready. The tools have never been more accessible. The information has never been more available. The barriers have never been lower. The best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is today, this week, this month, not after you finish reading one more book or listening to one more podcast or waiting for the market to settle down or feel less scary. Today. If this video moves something in you, I need you to smash that like button and share this with a woman in your life who needs to hear it, because knowledge shared is wealth compounded. I'll see you in the next one.